Reincarnation is, for some people in the West, it's a foreign idea. We're not brought up, generally speaking, depends on, of course, the family that you're brought up in. But generally in the West, it's considered to be a foreign idea. But the reality is that over 60% of people in the world have an understanding or a belief in reincarnation. So we're in the minority. As 40% of the world is not part of their life, but for over 60%, it's actually part of their understanding. Now, many people here may already have some acceptance or some idea or some belief in reincarnation and karma. But what I'd like to do is go through in a systematic way to give us a clear understanding of the laws and the logic of what reincarnation is. Like, what is reincarnation? What does it mean? Who is it that is reincarnating? What is the link? What is the cause for a person to reincarnate? What is the link between this life and our next life? What is karma? How does it impact on our life? Can we change our destiny? Because one of the topics that was on to talk about is destiny. Destiny is kind of understood, well, this is an unchangeable aspect of my existence. It's meant to be, it is going to happen, right? So this is generally what people think of fate or destiny. It's fate that we met, or that this happened or that happened, or it was my destiny that this was meant to take place. So we want to look at this aspect of karma and of how this information helps us to move beyond what is referred to in the Vedic teaching and also in the Buddhist philosophy. It's known as samsara. Anyone here familiar with the idea of samsara? Samsara is usually depicted as being a wheel. So reincarnation, the nature of the soul, the self, which we were just meditating on, we are the eternal self, is on a cycle. This wheel of samsara has 4 spokes in it. Birth, diseases, old age, and death. So these are the 4 spokes on this wheel of samsara. And because it is a wheel, as a wheel turns, the spokes also turn. In the Bhagavad-gita, Sri Krishna says, for one who is born, death is certain. For one who dies, birth is certain. So for one who is born, death is certain. And for one who dies, birth is certain. So this is the wheel of samsara. So let's begin with understanding what reincarnation means. If we look at that English word, reincarnation, it actually gives us a hint. Anyone who's better at English than me, what does re mean? Re means again, right? So, and the reincarnation, the word incarnation, the root for that is carnal, which means, carnal means a body. It means physical, flesh. It means a physical body. So reincarnation means that we are in one physical body, we leave this body, and then we enter into another physical body. So this is reincarnation. So there is a person, there is a self who is living in a particular body for some time, and then when this body is finished, that self, that real self, that living being, that soul or that atma, then takes on another material body. So reincarnation from one body, takes on another body, etc. Sometimes it's also referred to as transmigration of the soul. In the same way as a caterpillar may be on one leaf, it then kind of goes from this leaf and then moves on to another leaf. That's transmigration. So the first thing to understand is who is reincarnating. Generally in life, people identify themselves with their material body, that their identity of who they are is this physical form. So this body has different labels or different identities, such as male, female. Identity can be Australian, can be Chinese, Japanese, Indian, American. It can be of a certain age, of a certain occupation. So generally, this is how most people identify who they are. When we talk about who are you, now if I ask you, hi, who are you? Generally people answer with their name, their age, right? Their sex, perhaps their marital status, but their occupation, their nationality. Is this correct? Like, if you go to fill out a form for a job, or you go to a doctor's office, they get you to fill out your form, and this is the information that they want so that they actually can identify you, so they know who you are. So in the Vedic teaching, as well as other spiritual traditions, it is very clearly understood, realized, and then explained that we are not these physical bodies. That these bodies are actually like a suit of clothes that we, the self, wear. Krishna explains this very clearly. I'll see if I can find this. Actually, I did pick out the quote, if I can find it. It's a very nice, clear understanding of this reality. Yeah, so here in the second chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says, as a person puts on new garments, giving up the old ones, similarly, the soul accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So this is very easy to understand. We are not our clothes. We are not our shirt. We are not our blouse. We are not our jeans. That's clothes which I am wearing. So it's very easy to understand. Although I may take off my clothes and put on a new suit of clothes, it doesn't change me. So similarly, these clothes, have their different labels, man, woman, young, old, Australian, etc. But they are simply garments which the soul or the self is wearing. So reincarnation means these clothes that I'm wearing in this particular life, they become either too old or too diseased or too broken down for some reason or other, and then I have to leave them behind, and then I enter into put on another suit of clothes. So we are that self. We are not the physical body. The physical body is a temporary vehicle or garment which I'm wearing. I am actually the eternal spirit soul, the Atma. So I'd like to read a couple of more very nice gems of wisdom from Krishna in the Bhagavad-gita that make this very clear. Know that which pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable living entity. For the living entity there is never birth nor death. The living entity never ceases to exist. The living entity is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, undying and primeval. The living being is not slain when the body is slain. And I'll read a couple of very nice other verses as well. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. I'd just like to read that one again and then we'll talk about it. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by this change, by such a change. So everyone here, has anyone here still got like photographs from when you were a kid? That kind of thing? Do they still have photographic albums? Do they still exist? No, it's all on, it's all digital now, right? You even scan in the old ones. So if you have them, you can actually have a look and understand very clearly what Krishna is speaking here in the Bhagavad-gita. If you look at, the earliest photograph you have, as a baby. I don't know, do they still do them naked on a rug, with their bum? They still do that kind of stuff? I don't know. So there's a picture of me as a baby, right? And there's a picture of me, 5 years old, first day at school, right? There's a picture of me, 13, it's my, become a teenager, so it's a big birthday, and then so on. If you look at it, you can have, there's my 21st birthday party, there's my 30th birthday party, and there's no more pictures after that, right? No pictures, thank you, after that, right? So you'll be able to see, you can remember, perhaps, maybe not the baby body, but of course you know that you existed then. And then you can look at the 5-year-old girl or boy body and you remember, oh yes, I remember something from that time. And then you can look at, 13, 14, 15-year-old and, 20 or something. And then according to our age, further on into many other experiences. So this actually points to something very important. Because sometimes people are of the impression that this idea that we are not our body is simply a belief. But actually it has nothing to do with a belief at all. It is actually able to be understood very logically, reasonably, and scientifically. So let me start by asking you a couple of questions to help clarify this for all of us. The first question is, do you exist right now? If you don't exist, could you please put your hand up? No, you're all aware that you exist right now. There's nothing more real to us than our existence, is there? You know, if there's a tram coming down the track and it's going to hit me, then I'm going to get out of the way because I don't want to cease to exist. So I am aware that I exist now. Are you aware that you existed 5 years ago? Who is aware that you existed 5 years ago? Anybody? No? Some people are not aware or not sure. Who is aware that you existed 10 years ago? We are. Most of us are. Depends on how heavily we're into drugs in our earlier life. We may not have a memory of that. Now, just to take this one step further, I'd like to ask you to close your eyes, and I'd like you to think back to your earliest memory that you have of this life. How young you were, what your age was, and what that memory of an experience that you had at that time. Not something that your mother told you about or your father told you about, but something that you directly experienced and remember, because I remember that happening to me. So try to think of what that might be. Okay, if you can open your eyes. Did anything come to mind? Anyone would like to share what the memory, what the experience was, and what age you were approximately? Anyone, Ray? Kindly do that. Yes, sir. Say again?
I said it's Tad, not Sam.
Can't
3
see.
months old.
3 months?
Yeah, in a crib, and I remember the room very vividly. This is my first memory. And my mother couldn't believe that I remembered the details of the room.
Right.
But she said I was
3 months? So that's about a few years, just about 6 years ago or something. Has anyone else got a memory just I'd like to share? Another thought? Yes?
I remember accidentally squashing a caterpillar when I was a toddler.
So what, 3 or something, like 2 or 3, and it's still with you today. Right. So my earliest memory is around about 3 as well. I remember actually it was my 3rd birthday party because I got a present from my parents. It was a little wooden dog that was on wheels, and when you pulled it along, the head nodded and the tail moved. So I remember getting that present, and I was pretty stoked. And then I remember my older sister, 2 years older, so she was 5, grabbing it and running away with it and teasing me on my birthday. And I remember how angry I felt that she'd taken my birthday gift. So that's 58 years ago that happened to me. So what's the point of this? The point is that I was there. That experience happened to me. It happened to me, and I am now recalling the experience that happened to me. But the body which I had then is not the same body that you see now. It's not like the 3-year-old body is just stretched and then kind of started wrinkling and getting spots on it. This is a completely different body. In fact, scientifically, it has been analysed that the body changes every 5 years. There is not one single atom present in our body today that was present in the body that we had 5 years ago. It is completely 100% down to every single atom. Every 3 to 5 years, the body completely changes. So what's this got to do with reincarnation? It means that there is something which is constant. The body is not constant. My thought in my minds are always changing. That is not constant. But that constant principle is the self. I experienced my sister taking my toy. I was there. But that body's changed. So that constant principle is the self. That is me. Through this ever-changing kaleidoscope of the body, and as Krishna is saying there, from the boyhood to youth, to middle age to old age, the soul passes from each one of these bodies. So reincarnation, each one of us here has already experienced reincarnation. Coming back to our definition of what reincarnation means, it means I'm in one particular body, one physical material body. I leave that body and I am then in a different body. Is this understandable? So as the body is changing every 5 years, we have already reincarnated, however old our body is, in this so-called one lifetime. So that has nothing to do with your belief or my belief in that reality. The self is the permanent reality through this ever-changing body. So is there anything on that idea before I move on? Because it's vital that we actually have an understanding of the nature of the self being different from the body. Otherwise, we will not understand anything about the reality of reincarnation, the laws of reincarnation, and how we can ultimately overcome this wheel of samsara, of birth and rebirth, which is actually desirable, which is the goal. Any questions on that simple idea? So, this is the beginning. Aham Brahmasmi, I am the eternal spirit soul. I am only temporarily in this particular material body. When this body finishes, I continue to exist. And then I will take on another material body. So the first thing to understand is that we are not this, what we can describe as the gross physical body, which we see with each other's eyes. This is not me. So we should also understand the nature of the mind. Because the spirit soul, me, the self, I am covered by two kinds of bodies. Not just this gross or external physical body. I am also covered by what is known as the subtle body. Some people use the term astral body or the mind. So it's just like a person. Maybe we're wearing our undergarments, our undies and singlets and whatever. So that's covering me as the first layer. And then there is a second layer, or these kind of clothes, and then jackets and things like that. So we, the spirit soul, are covered by the mind. The mind is a subtle body. The mind is not the brain. The brain and the mind are not synonymous. Of course they connect, of course there's a connection, but the gross, the matter within the skull, that is not the mind. The mind is a subtle material element. In fact, Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad-gita when he describes there are 8 kinds of material energies: earth, water, fire, air, ether, the mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are described as the inferior material energy. And the spirit soul is of the superior spiritual nature, covered by these subtle and gross forms. So when we leave, so the mind, let me maybe touch on this first. The mind is the reservoir of all kinds of desires. This is where desires are. They actually are there in the mind. Our memories, of course, are there in the mind, and our desires are also there in the mind. So when me, the spirit soul, when I leave this gross physical body at death, if I still have material desires, and we'll get into things like karma as well, then I am still covered by this subtle body of the mind and its desires. And it is the shape of the mind or our consciousness which is the template around which the next gross physical body takes place. Is that at least understandable what I'm talking about? So if I say the mind is there, the desires are in the mind, and then when the gross physical body is no longer able to be used, I am still covered by the subtle body. And then it is due to that subtle body and the shape or the nature of the consciousness and the material mind that we have cultivated in this life, which determines what my next life, the kind of next life I will have, the kind of body that I will take on. So there are basically 2 factors which are involved in determining why a person reincarnates. Why is it that I take on one body after the other? The first thing to look at is material desires. Basically, it is because of material desires or desires to enjoy in a certain way in this world that I actually then come back and take on a material body to try to fulfill those desires which I have within the mind. If you look at the gross physical body, you will see that the gross physical body is like a vehicle or a means by which a person tries to fulfill their desires. What do we do with the tongue? What does the tongue do? Obviously, it doesn't talk. It does. The tongue likes to talk. What else does the tongue like? Ice cream? Pizza? Raw beetroot salad? Depends what you're into, right? One man's food is another man's poison. So the tongue is the manifestation of the desire to enjoy taste. right? If you didn't have the sense of taste, if you couldn't have tongue orgasms, because that's what's taking place, right? And that's why you eat ice cream with a little teaspoon. You don't just kind of shovel it in. Okay, I'm done. No, you want to. What do they call it? You want to savor every bite. You want to. You never see those guys like, professional eaters. What do they call them? Gourmets? Is that what they're called? Gourmets, or whatever. The guys who just their life they live to eat. But this is just. You see them on like Master Chef and things like that, right? And they go, just take a little. And they go, and it's kind of rolling over the tongue, and they're just savouring it. This is. You can see they're having an orgasm basically in the mouth. So the tongue is a manifestation of the desire to enjoy taste. What do the ears do? The ears like to enjoy certain sounds, certain kind of music, certain kind of voices. So if we look at the body and its senses, the eyes, what do they like to do? They like to look at something beautiful, something attractive, right? So the senses are actually the body with its senses is the vehicle which is there so that because of the desires within the mind that the person tries to fulfill their material desires. So this is the main thing which is determining why when we leave this body we take on another physical body is because of the desires within the mind. There's a story in the Vedas that illustrate how the desires do not dissolve or disappear as the body ages or at the time of death. So it's not like the desires just go away as the body ages or dies. And there's a story of a spiritual teacher, and he was trying to explain and teach his student the nature of desire and how powerful it is and how it actually draws a person back to take on another material body because they are so powerful. So what happened was he invited his student to go and visit. There was a gentleman in the village they were living in who was on his deathbed. So they were going to visit the man that evening, and the spiritual teacher said to his disciple to bring your sister with you, very beautiful sister, young woman. So the three of them arrived outside of the door of the house where this gentleman was dying on his deathbed. So before they went in, the spiritual teacher said, "When we go in, I want you to keep your eyes on the eyes of the old man on the bed." So as they walked in, and as the young woman walked around the room, they noticed what? Where were the old man's eyes doing? On her. That's a very good way to say it. Those eyes were on her. And as she moved around the room, his eyes also moved around the room, looking at the beautiful young woman. Now the man, he was on his deathbed. It means nothing is working anymore. The senses don't work. It doesn't matter if he has Viagra. It's not going to help. He's actually on his deathbed. But still, the desire to enjoy the beautiful girl's body is still there within the mind. Is that understandable? So then, knowing that is actually what is the cause of the person then taking on another material body, because you need the genitals, you need the tongue, you need the eyes, the ears, to be able to fulfill the desires in the mind. Is that understandable? So it is due to material desires why a person takes on another material body. So then we also now come to the idea of karma. Karma is a common term used in our society these days. Someone hits their thumb with a hammer, that's your bad karma, or something, right? So we have some idea of what it is. But the word karma actually means action. The word karma means action. So usually what people are thinking about is what's known as karmic reaction. So in this life, we act. Sometimes we do nice things to others. We say nice things to others. Sometimes we're not so nice to others, and we may not do nice things to others or say nice things to others. So as we are acting, every action that we engage in this life, in the pursuance of the material desires which I have, in other words, my actions are centered around trying to fulfill my personal desire, what I want in life. Those actions have a reaction to them. As is said in the Holy Bible, as you sow, so you will reap. So it's very simple, and even in common language, what goes around comes around. So it's a very common understanding that this is the nature of things. So our actions or our karma is also affecting why we reincarnate and in what kind of body and what kind of circumstances and what my destiny. That's where we come into the idea of destiny. Is my destiny predetermined? Yes and no. It's not predetermined by God. In other words, God is not up in the sky going, you'll be born ugly and in Rwanda, like a chess game. And you will be born in, the Gold Coast to a rich family, who owns Billabong. Like as if that's kind of, that the Supreme is kind of playing chess with our lives. So in that sense, no, it is not predestined. We are the architects of our destiny. That is vital for us to understand. So how is it that we are the architects of our destiny? Not by some vague idea of being in some cloud somewhere with a whole bunch of other souls and we're kind of sitting there over organic green tea, and just discussing, I think the lesson I'd like to learn in my next life is, I'd like to learn this lesson or that lesson. This is fantasy. This actually has nothing to do with reality. But still, my destiny is in my own hands by how I live my life now. I am determining my destiny or my fate by how I'm living today, Saturday, whatever the date is, right? Today, I am actually laying down my destiny, my future destiny, by how I'm acting now. And a simple way to understand this, pardon me, is trams or trains, whichever way you want to look at it. For a train or a tram to go to a certain destination, what has to happen first? Let's say, there's a train and it's going to go to some particular place. The first thing that must happen before the train can go there is the tracks must be laid down first. Yeah? So after the tracks are laid down, then the train or the tram, whatever it is, then follows the direction and the path of that tracks that were laid down. So right now, we have already laid down ahead of us the tracks of our future destiny by this law of karma. So I'm acting, I'm interacting with others, and this is actually where we are laying down the tracks. By what I'm doing now, there is a reaction to every single action that I take. For every breath you take, for every move you make, there is karma. There is a karmic reaction, both good and bad. So, maybe someone's thinking, well, I'll just live a good life. I'll just live, I'll just be really nice to people and then the good will cancel out the bad. No, this is also not true. Because both are there. It's like a bank account. It's another way to understand it. In a bank account, you have the black and the red. In other words, you have credit, some money in the bank, which you can spend, and buy things. But then you also have debt, don't you? Debit column. So similarly, good and bad karma, we have things which are going to come back to us in a good way, and things which are due to come back to me, some kind of material distress or suffering or something like that. So that is laid down. So the destiny that I'm experiencing now in this life, today, yesterday, the day before, last year, 10 years ago, what I was experiencing was my destiny because of the tracks which I laid down previously by my previous activities. Is that at least the idea understandable? So this is actually how destiny is arranged, by how I live my life, the actions I engage in. And of course, there's a connection between my actions and the mind and the cultivation of certain desires. If you pick up, let's say someone, I don't know, what's a place in the middle of Victoria, like country? Geelong. I don't know, somewhere out there, right? And someone's born there and they've never been surfing, but they get a magazine, a surfing magazine, or they start watching something on YouTube. And and they start watching it and watching. Wow, and people talking about how much fun it is and how good it is. So what the person's doing with their senses is impacting upon the desires. Is that understandable? What we look at. If someone's telling you about, oh man, there's this restaurant, lentil as anything, and blah blah blah, and I got this great thing, and and you're kind of, oh wow, sounds good. And if they're really raving about it, how good the food is and how cheap it is, what could that potentially do to me? It can potentially make it so that I have the desire to go and check it out. Yeah? So the connection between what I'm experiencing with my senses and my internal desires, they're connected. You know, if a guy, I was going to say a magazine, but just showing my age, if someone is surfing a porn site, you know, on the internet, and they're kind of watching the videos or the pictures or whatever, they're using their senses. What kind of desires do you imagine might arise in a person doing that? Potentially, what could they be thinking of doing? Not gardening? Not going down to, Bunnings or something and buying some azaleas to plant? No, it's not connected. The desires in the mind are connected by what we do with our senses. So there is this interaction between what we do with our body, the actions in life, and the mind, but also the desires in the mind then move me to engage my body in certain activities to fulfill the desires in the mind. Is that understandable? So the desires in the mind are very strong, and they move me to use my body to try to fulfill the desire to drive to Bunnings, to buy the flowers, to take them and kind of, whatever, right? So therefore, the desires are also connected to this experience of action and reaction to those actions. So up to this point, this is all not sexy stuff. It's not like who you were in your last life or who you're going to be in your next life, although we'll kind of touch on that a little bit. This is actually understanding the nuts and bolts and the details and the laws which actually govern the reality of reincarnation. So material desires, karmic reaction, they're all connected, and these combined actually cause the person to take on another material body when this body is finished. Any questions up to this point? Anything that's not clear, that kind of question? I mean, these are things that will need to be considered. I'm not in any way expecting that you'll just blindly accept what I'm saying, but what I'm hoping is that you'll actually listen and then consider the ideas to see how they whether they sit right. So now we're up to this idea that this is the cause of reincarnation. This is what determines what kind of body I will take on. There is no such thing as an accident. Let me make that very clear. There is no such thing as an accident. Years ago when I was driving taxis, I was going through college to learn acupuncture and things like that, and to pay my way through, I used to drive taxis in Brisbane. And I had to go on a defensive driving course, as part of getting the license. And on the first day of the defensive driving course, the instructor asked all of us, put up your hand if you've been involved in an accident. Some of us are a bit reluctant because we thought it might interfere with us getting a taxi license, But, we put our hand up. And the instructor said, no. He said, none of you have been involved in an accident. We're going, no, well, he ran the red light and hit me. That's an accident. So he's going, no, that's not an accident. If you look at it, everything has a cause. He ran the red light. That's not an accident. Because an accident means no cause, no reason. It just happened. But if you look at it, there is a cause. He ran the red light. Or even if someone drives off the road and hits a tree, he's the only person in the car. The tree didn't jump out in front of him, right? But maybe he shouldn't have been driving. Maybe he was sleepy. Maybe he'd drunk something. You know what I mean? So there's a cause for everything. So the cause is action and desire. It's not an accident that we are born into a particular family. It's not an accident that we experience what we experience in life. There is a cause for everything. And understanding these laws of karma and the laws of the subtle nature of desires and how they impact on our life is vital to understand that. Because if we don't have that, then we won't understand how I can change my destiny, which is actually what we want to understand. How to change our destiny so that we no longer need to take on another material body ever again. And at this point, maybe I can touch on this idea as well. Many people who accept or believe in reincarnation but don't have a complete understanding of how it works, sometimes are under the impression that reincarnation is something good. It's like a fun journey. I used to be a dancer in the pyramids, or I used to be Cleopatra. Right now there's about 15,000 reincarnated Cleopatras out there, right? It's never like, I was the brown dog that got run over by the tram in Smith Street. No one ever, you go to some hip Gnosis guy or something. They never tell you that, right? They say you're someone famous and all this kind of thing. So let us understand the reality that reincarnation is not desirable. It is not desirable that I come back and take on another material body. But you know, if I've got all these desires and I'm experiencing things in my life and I'm experiencing eating and, you know, what's wrong with coming in and having that all over again? Surely that would be fun. Only if we don't actually see the reality of life in the material world with a material body. Remember that idea of the wheel of samsara had 4 spokes. Birth. Anyone here ever born? Anyone here was born? Who here was not born? Now, most of us don't remember our birth. But have any of you been mothers? Any of you here are mothers? Or you've seen birth? Is that fun? Now, let's be honest. Let's not be politically correct here. Birth is actually quite, like, you know, we have a son, and I was there at the birth, and it didn't look like a walk in the park. It didn't look like, yeah, I'd like to do this every day. It seems to be an extremely difficult thing to go through, and painful. There seems to be pain involved. And for the child, does that look like a walk in the park? No, it's also quite painful. This big coming out of birth canal, not that big, and squeezing out, and you don't wonder why they cry, you know, when they eventually come out. So birth is actually the cause of suffering. Birth is a suffering condition for the soul. The second spoke is diseases. We don't even like a flu, a cold, a stubbed toe, let alone things like cancer and heart attacks and angina and all those kind of things, right? So birth, diseases, these are a cause of suffering. Old age. Oh, let me tell you about old age. I'm just on the cusp. I'm right on the cusp of old age. I'm just starting to kind of get a little inkling. But my mother recently passed away. She was in her 90th year. And she was ready to go, to be quite honest. 90 is a good innings, as they say. But all the things that started happening with the age of the body, it's kind of like if anyone here has an old car. Anyone here poor and just have an old car and you just got to keep driving it until you can't drive it anymore? You know, the tyres start going bald, it starts blowing smoke. You know, the brakes, you've got to kind of just jam it because it's not going to stop. And the steering, you've got to actually steer like this because, you know that kind of car. I don't know if they're not allowed on the road anymore, right? But I've had cars like that. And it just gets to a point where you go, close the door, walk away, you know, call the wreckers. It just can't work anymore. So if we get to enjoy old age, this is what happens to the vehicle of this body as well. Now, you know, physically, would we rather have 18 or 80? I'm not talking about experience of life or awareness. I'm talking about how this vehicle works. 18 or 80? 18, of course. It's strong. It's fresh. So old age is also a cause of distress. Death. You know, people try to talk away death. Oh, it's a natural part of life. Well, it is a part of the material life. But actually, it is actually a cause of great suffering, both for the person going through the experience and for those of us who are attached to the person who is dying. Both of us experience great suffering because of attachment. You know, the pain of death is not just the physical experience of whatever it is that's causing the body to finish and me have to leave it. The greatest pain of death is the breaking of attachments to those who we love, our house, you know, our city, our country, all the things that we are so used to with the senses, and then we have to leave all of that behind. That is actually the pain of death. The physical pain, relatively speaking, comes and goes. So birth, diseases, old age, and death. This is the nature of a material body that the soul experiences when we are embodied in a physical form. So reincarnation is not desirable. It is actually unnatural for the eternal spirit soul to be residing in a temporary material body and experiencing birth, disease, old age, and death. It is not natural. The nature of the soul is described as Sat, Chit, Ananda. These are Sanskrit terms. Sat means the nature of the soul is we are eternal. Chit means full of knowledge or understanding, wisdom. No ignorance is part of the soul. And Ananda means blissful by nature. So the nature of the soul is to be experiencing bliss. We cannot in any way describe the physical or material body as being a source of bliss or ananda. It is a source of temporary pleasure. Of course it is. Of course there is pleasure experienced through the senses in the body. But they come and go very quickly, and it is a big price to pay for the birth, diseases, old age, and death. That's the big price we have to pay for those experiences. So the great saints and sages, the Supreme Lord himself is saying we should actually finish this cycle of birth and rebirth. It is not natural for the soul to be here. So reincarnation is actually not desirable. We should find a solution to the problem of reincarnation, to come back to our eternal Sat Chit Ananda nature. So is there anything else up to this point on those ideas? Just to make sure it's clear. So let us explore how, if there's nothing up to this point, we can now explore how to solve the problem of reincarnation. Is that okay? So it's obvious that to transcend reincarnation, we have to somehow or other remove material desires. As long as there are material desires, we must take on a material body. And as long as we are acting in this life and reaping the results of that karmic reaction, this is the tracks being laid down for my future destiny. So I must live a life with no material desires. I must become purified of those material desires which are the cause of my reincarnation. And I must not create any more karmic reaction. And my previous stock of karmic reaction must be removed. Otherwise, I must take on another material body. So how can I live in life without acting? How can I just remove all material desires and have no material desire? Do we all need to move to the Himalayas and find our own cave? I don't think there's enough caves, for all of us who are desirous of doing that. And also it is not practical. So the Vedic teaching, the yoga wisdom, teaches that the beginning is called jnana, wisdom or knowledge. To have knowledge is actually the beginning of learning how to live a life in which I do not cultivate material desires nor act in such a way which causes karmic reaction. So through knowledge of the reality that I am the eternal self, I am not the material body, I am not the material mind, I am the eternal spirit soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. That is the beginning of the path to conquer reincarnation. Because if I understand that I am eternal soul, I am not the material body or mind, then this helps me to see I should act upon this reality. So it's not enough just to know aham brahmasmi as a philosophical idea, because I'm sure everybody here already has some inkling or understanding or realization of that reality, that you are not your body. But it's not enough just to have that philosophical belief or idea or even realization. We must act upon that reality. So I am spirit soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. I have an eternal loving relationship with the Supreme Soul. So to act on that in this life, so in other words, not to act simply on the whim of the senses which are dragging me everywhere. Not simply to be the slave of my senses and my material desires. To actually be the master of my destiny means to also be the master of my senses and the master of my mind and desires. There are two terms used in Sanskrit, Godas and Goswami. Go means the senses. Das means servant of the preceding word. So if in life we are Godas, we are dragged around by the tongue, by the nose, by the genitals, by the eyes, by the ears. Whenever they demand something, we must be their obedient servant. If the tongue demands something, I must serve the tongue. I must, even though it may not be good for my health, or if the senses, any of the other senses are calling, demanding, I must become their obedient slave. No, this is Godas. Goswami. Go means senses. Swami means master of the preceding. So we must actually become Goswamis, master of our mind and of our senses. So how we do that is acting upon the wisdom. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit. I am a part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. So when one acts in this life, in the service of, for the pleasure of the Supreme Soul, this is called Karma Yoga. So yoga means, the Sanskrit word yoga means linking up or connecting. Yoga doesn't mean pretzel. It's not a Sanskrit word for pretzel. The word yoga means to link up, to connect, or union. Sometimes the word yoga is translated as relationship. So karma meaning action. Yoga meaning union or connection with the divine or with the Supreme Soul. So when we act upon the knowledge, the jnana, the knowledge, I am spirit soul, part of the Supreme Soul, when I act in this life on that knowledge, this is called Karma Yoga. And Karma Yoga does not bind one to the material world. When we act in this life in the service of and for the pleasure of the Supreme Soul, those actions do not bind me to the material world. They actually lead to what is known as Bhakti Yoga, or loving devotion. This is quite a large topic that we can't cover in depth, but it's quite easy to understand that. Has anyone here ever loved someone? Or you love someone now? Anyone here ever experienced love? No, we all have. I know that. When you love somebody, it is a natural outcome of love that you want to please that person. Is that not true? Love is, to please the person is a spontaneous and natural outcome of love. Let's say there's some friend that you're developing a relationship with, you want to be in, you want to have a relationship with, and you invite them over to your house for dinner. What might you do that day before they come over for dinner? You might clean the house. You might even vacuum. Me, I'd get the undies and throw them under the bed. Pick up all the old dirty clothes and make sure it was clean in the lounge at least, And then you go to the shops and you go and, decide what the menu's going to be, and you decide what you're going to cook. So you go and buy candles, you might buy some wine, organic, non-alcoholic, and you kind of put things out and you make it really pleasant. And then you spend, maybe it's a really hot day, like 35 degrees in Melbourne, right? Dry, hot. And you might spend the whole day in the kitchen cooking 2 or 3 different dishes, right? Because the person who you care about and you love is coming over and you want them to be happy. Has anyone ever done anything like that? Yes, we all have to some varying degree. Is that like, do you get angry at the person and want to punch them out and be really pissed off and bummed with them because you've spent the day shopping and cooking and cleaning? But when they come and visit you and you welcome them with a cold drink and you invite them to sit down and then you serve the meal out and you're waiting for them to taste it and you ask them, how is it? And they go, that's really nice. And then after the meal, they're feeling really comfortable. How do you feel? You feel happy, do you not? Do you not feel happy in the happiness of the person who you love? So those activities which we engage in, which are based upon love, are not a burden. They're not like, we don't see it as being like going to work, do we? It's not the same as going to work, which we do just for the money, right? So the nature of the relationship between the spirit soul and the Supreme Soul is one of love. That love in the material conditioned state is covered. That relationship is forgotten or covered by material desires, by greed, envy, anger, lust, by karmic reaction, by selfishness. All these things are actually like pollution or covering over the Sat Chit Ananda, pure soul. So it is due to this material covering which is causing me to live a life centered around my selfish personal desires, thinking erroneously that if I fulfill my desires, my material desires, this will equate to happiness. I will be happy if I follow the dictates of my mind's demands. But each one of us knows this is actually not true. How many times has our mind lied to us? Regularly. Regularly. The mind is a bastard. Do not trust it. It will lie to you. And we've all experienced that. So we have to see, we have to have jnana or knowledge, insights into the workings of the mind and its demands. So do not believe that. So the mind will also say, serve God. I got out of church because all that kind of stuff. That's why I no longer, that's why I'm leading right? So many of us have also had that same experience where religion, we start thinking of religion, and is this guy talking about religion? Is like us, got to join some new religion? No. It is the nature of the soul, and it is meditation and spiritual life is the uncovering of the pollution which is now over the pure soul. That is what real spiritual life means. It doesn't mean joining some church or some group or some organization. It doesn't mean declaring allegiance to anything or anyone. It actually means engaging in a process, in practices which uncover my true spiritual nature. And the true spiritual nature of the soul is to actually lovingly serve the Supreme Soul. Is that understandable? Where there is love, there is no fear. And it's not like you're on a bummer, because that is an eternal spiritual relationship. That is the nature of the soul. So to this process of Bhakti Yoga, is where a person learns how to harmonize our lives in such a way that they actually help us to remember and to cultivate that eternal loving relationship with the Supreme Soul, and then to live a life based upon that loving relationship. So then, when a person acts in karma yoga or bhakti yoga, there is no resultant material reaction to those actions, because it is not a material activity, it is a spiritual activity. Externally you may not see any difference between one person who is living for themselves and a person who is trying to live endeavoring to live a spiritual life. Externally you may not see that there is any difference in their actions. And there may not be externally. It is an internal thing which is different. Like today, our friends down here, this chair didn't just manifest itself out of nowhere. I didn't just put it out to the universe and then I arrived here and there it was. And these cushions didn't just kind of flow there from outer space. And the meal that they're preparing for us, we're going to enjoy, didn't just happen. It means they engaged in activities to do this work. So they're working. And then Madhulila to sing for us with a harmonium. She's using her voice and her musical ability, right? So this is all action. Right now I'm using a microphone. I could be selling you Amway, because I like to speak. So rather than speaking about this, I could be speaking about some other multi-level marketing kind of thing, right? But I'm choosing to speak about these ideas. I will not get good karma for doing this. The guys who set this room up will not get good karma for setting the room up and cooking the dinner. They won't get bad karma, but they also will not get good karma, because this is actually a devotional activity on the platform of karma yoga or bhakti yoga. So it doesn't mean necessarily changing my whole lifestyle and giving up responsibility, family, community. No, it means contributing, taking responsibility, but learning how to spiritualize all of my activities. This is actually the solution to the problem of karma. So engaging my senses, like right now I'm speaking, I'm using my tongue, I'm using my eyes, you're using your ears to listen to the ideas that I'm speaking about. So we're still using our senses. We don't kind of, block them all out. We're still actively engaging, but the activities themselves are spiritual and spiritualizing because of the connection to the Supreme Soul, the Supreme Friend. Is that understandable? So one can eat. It doesn't mean, you have to eat like just thin soup with no salt and just a little bit of veggie and to be really austere. No. In the Bhagavad-gita, Sri Krishna describes, he actually encourages us, he invites us. He said, if someone offers me with love and devotion some fruit, flower or water or a leaf, I will accept it. So we can actually offer vegetarian food. You can eat 6 times a day if you want. But before eating, rather than, in the same way as before having a flower, maybe you have a flower and you go, I just love, gardenias or whatever it might be. In Bhakti Yoga, it doesn't mean you cannot have flowers because smelling them cultivates a desire to come back because I still need a nose, right, to smell gardenias. It means before smelling the flower, I offer this, my dear Lord, please kindly accept this flower for your pleasure. So, and then I get to have the flower which I've been offered to the Supreme Lord. It's now spiritualized and spiritualizing. So it's not like I have to give up smelling flowers, but before smelling them, let me offer them to the Supreme. That action does not bind one. And before eating, I can eat, but before eating, even in my cooking and before eating, let me offer this to the Supreme Lord. My dear Lord, I've made this in the same way as you invite a dear friend over. Usually if you invite a friend over, you feed them first, yeah? You don't kind of sit in the kitchen, eat your share, and then bring out the leftovers to the friend you invited over, right? Or if you give them a plate, you lean over and just start eating from their plate. No, you offer it to them first in a very nice way. And then when you've offered them the plate, then you'll also have some yourself. It's very real and very practical. So in bhakti, one actually learns how to dovetail even one's eating in such a way that there is no karmic reaction. Because even if one is a vegetarian or a vegan or a raw vegan, there is still karmic reaction for the act of eating another living entity's body. That's what karma means. Because that carrot was happily living in the ground. It's living, it's alive, and we come out, we pull it out, and we chop its head off, and we chop it up and throw it in some water, right? So that there's still karmic reaction, even as a vegetarian. It doesn't solve the problem of karma. But eating a vegetarian diet and offering that food to Krishna or God, when I say Krishna, I mean God, the Supreme Person. That activity actually brings me closer to the Supreme, and actually helps to purify my consciousness, and it develops a desire to please the Lord. By my actions, I'm cultivating spiritual desire, and because I'm cultivating spiritual desire, the desires in the mind then move me externally in my actions in life. So the connection is still there, but now it is spiritualized. Pardon me. Is that also understandable? How that works. Spiritual activities do not create karma, either good or bad. You won't get good karma for spiritual activities, because even good karma is not desirable. Even good karma, some people say they just want to have good karma, but good karma also necessitates coming back and having another material body to experience the good karma, right? If you're going to be born in a rich family, or you're going to have a healthy body or a beautiful body, it still means you need a body. And what comes with a body? Birth, diseases, old age, death. Even the richest, most handsome, beautifulest person still experiences birth, diseases, old age, and death. And it's due to that person's good karma why they're born into that situation. So good karma is also not desirable for the transcendentalist. They also see this as being unnecessary and part of the problem. So then, cultivating that desire and acting in this life in karma yoga or bhakti yoga, when the person comes to the point of leaving this body, there is no more subtle body. Earlier we talked about the mind full of desires. So now there is simply desire to please the Supreme, and one's been acting in this life in the service of and for the pleasure of the Supreme Soul. So then at the point of death, one's attachment is to God or is to the Supreme. And one's desire, which one has cultivated throughout their life's activities, is to be with and to serve and to love and to please the Supreme Soul. So it is this desire, this spiritual desire, which actually then takes the person to that eternal spiritual realm where they engage eternally in this loving relationship with the Supreme Soul. There is no need to take on another material body because there is no material desires there in the mind. There is no karmic reaction which has to be experienced down the tracks of karma, and one actually then is resituated in their eternal spiritual nature and does not take on another material body. So how to purify the mind, because that sounds all good in theory, but I still have so many material desires. I still have material desires. I can't just flip a switch and go, well, that's it, I'm not going to desire anymore. And I see, no, that's not real, is it? It's not all of a sudden I can just make that decision and it's going to happen. So the Vedic teaches, specifically Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, teaches a very easy and simple way to purify the heart and the mind. And he quotes this Vedic mantra, this Vedic verse. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalo. Kolo nasteva, 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 gati anyata. This means to chant the holy names, chant the holy names, chant the holy names. Hari means the supreme. The English word name comes from the Sanskrit word nama. So this is said 3 times. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama. To sing and chant and to meditate upon the beautiful names of the Supreme Soul is to bring us directly and personally in touch with the Supreme Soul. There is no difference between the holy names of God and God. They are the sound vibration, the beautiful sound of the holy names of the Supreme are non-different from God. So as we sing the holy names of God, we are directly in union or yoga or in the presence of the Supreme Soul. And as God is all pure, is the all pure, and therefore also the all purifying, so similarly the names of the Supreme, being non-different from the Supreme, are all pure and all purifying. So as we sing and chant and meditate upon the holy names of God, they purify the heart and the mind of material attachments, material desires, of greed, of anger, of lust, of all this material contamination which is covering the pure soul. They are very easily removed and purified by the transcendental potency of the names of the Supreme. So to regularly hear and chant the names of God is described as being the prime benediction for all living beings, because it brings me closer to the Supreme. It purifies me of all past karmic reaction. This is very easily purified from the heart and the mind because of the spiritual potency of the holy name. So all my previous karma becomes burned up in love of God. It also, the holy names, chanting the holy names, reawakens and kindles this dormant relationship within the heart. This spiritual love within the heart is experienced gradually more and more as one chants the holy names. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that these holy names give us a taste for that nectar or that spiritual love that we are always seeking. So this is actually the path of bhakti, which the center of it is this very beautiful experience of meditation upon the holy names. That through this method, I cannot overcome material desires by my own power. Material nature and material desires are far more powerful than me. But through taking shelter in the Supreme, via the holy names of God, it is actually becomes very, very easy, very simple. It is a gradual thing. Gradually, my heart and mind become purified, and I then naturally want to live a life in harmony with the Supreme. And then the more I do this, then of course the more, I become, my life becomes centered on the Supreme, my relationship with God. This is the purpose for my existence, and everything else is part of that. Just like, you have this, what do you call it, the hub of a wheel, and you have the spokes coming out from that. So when our life is centered around this cultivation or developing of this love for the Supreme, then all of the connected aspects of my life, from my relationships with my parents, my friends, my work, all of my life is then connected from this hub of what the central core of my life is. So this is like a very brief summary of reincarnation, its laws, and how to overcome the problem of repeated birth and death. So do you want to have a little bit of a break? Does anyone think you have any questions you want to ask about? Anyone? If you want to learn how you can apply this in your life, like I said, it's really important to understand that it's not about joining some religion or joining some group or something like that. It's a matter of learning the process, the techniques which we apply in our own personal life. So if you'd like to learn more about the process of Bhakti Yoga and how to apply it in your life, I know my friends down here would be happy to help you further. And it's not like it's a bummer. Spiritual life is not meant to be a bummer and a drag and something that we, oh no, I'll wait until I'm on my deathbed. No, spiritual life is dynamic, and it is actually life. This is where life actually springs from, is in spiritual practice. So it's not just a dull, dry thing. It is very dynamic and very wonderful. So, like I said, if you'd like to learn more, then our friends down here have regular programs, and you can learn more about the chanting of the holy name. And it's very, very nice. You become very attracted to it. So we have some refreshments. So thank you very much. We will have some refreshments and then come back for a little bit of chanting, and then if any questions.